I guess we'll go ahead and start. I want to welcome everyone to the first one in a series of webinars that we're going to be doing here at Therap Global. Today we're going to talk about Therap's individual data form. This is going to be recorded so we can share it with people later, or people can go back and look at it. So to start with, can everybody hear me okay? If not, let me know. So I am on our global website, and the address is up here at the top, www.therapglobal.net. And on the website, there's a lot of links to different information. You can contact us, and there's information about different parts of our system, user guides, training videos, and then the list of different things that are coming up, and blog posts, some testimonials. So there's a lot of really good stuff. And here is our Therap Global team, and some of our partnership and membership are on the bottom here as well. So I am going to be logging into a demo account that we use for training and demonstration. And in Therap, once you get an account, you would go to log in by clicking in the upper right corner where it says log in to Therap. It's going to bring you to the login page. So everybody that uses Therap, they will get a login name assigned to them, and you would get a provider code. So this provider code is for one of our demonstration accounts, but each agency would have their own provider code. And then when you first start using Therap, you get a temporary password, but then you change it and you would log in using the password that you have selected. And so this is what it looks like when you first log into Therap. And we call this the dashboard. And these things over here on the left, we call them tabs. So each tab corresponds with a different part of the system. So the to-do tab is where things show up that you need to read, review, or acknowledge. The individual tab is where you can do a lot of different types of documentation on the individuals. And then we have health tab. Some of the things we're going to be looking at today, we're going to be doing from our admin tab. And the way that Therap works, different people have different privileges in the system depending on what they need, and they also would have different caseloads. So the privileges are kind of like the level of things that you can do. So you might have the ability to view something, you might have the ability to document something, you might have the ability to run a report, and then the caseload is going to determine whose information that you can see in the system once it's all set up in there. So today we're going to talk about what Therap calls the individual data form. So the individual data form is kind of like what some people might call a face sheet or a demographic page, or I've heard some people call it a fact sheet. If you have a paper record, it's usually the first couple of pages in that record that's going to have all the basic information about the individuals. And when you're using Therap, which is an electronic health record system for documentation for individuals with disabilities, the first thing you really have to do when you're setting up your system is put the information in on the individuals that you're going to document on. So I'm going to show you today how that process works. So from the admin tab, I'm going to go down to this care section on my dashboard, and it says individual intake. So there's a couple of steps to this process. The first thing, if I have a new individual I want to put in the system, I want to gather up the information that I have on paper or wherever else I may have that for them and kind of have it with me. And I'm going to go to this row that says individual intake, and I'm going to click where it says new. So to start with, I just have to put in a couple pieces of information about the individual. And so anything in Therap that has a red asterisk, like right here and right here for the first and last name, that means that it's a requirement to put information in the field or box next to it. If there's not a red asterisk, that means it's optional. So really, when we're first starting to put in a new individual, the two things that we have to have are their first and last name. If you have this other information, that's helpful and good to put in, but it's not something that is required, so it's okay if you don't have all this information. So we're going to put in an individual, and this is just an individual that we are making up for training purposes. So I'm going to put in their first name. And then I'm going to put in their last name. And then if I have their middle name and want to put it in there, I can. If they go by a nickname or there's a certain name that they like to be called, you can put that in here. And then Social Security number would be for the U.S., but also Medicaid number, ID type. This may vary depending on where you are. This drop down could be different, so your system might be set up a little bit different. If they have an ID number or a record number, you can put that there. And then for their birth date, you click on this calendar icon and you can select the year that they were born and then the month and the day, and it's going to put their birth date in there. So I'm just going to start with their first name, last name. They go by their first name, and then I'm going to hit save. So that's the first step of when I'm just starting to put an individual into the system. And when you're doing things in Therap, when you go to submit something or save something, you're going to get this message that says successfully saved. If you don't get this message, that means it was not successfully saved. So sometimes there might be something you missed or something that was required that you need to enter in. But if you get this message, it was successfully saved, that's how you know that everything went as you wanted it to. So now I'm going to show you kind of after I put that basic information in, where did it go? So I'm going to go back out to the dashboard. And when you're in Therap and you need to get back out to the dashboard, there's two different ways. You can click up here where it says dashboard, or you can click on our logo. So I'm going to click on dashboard. And it's bringing me back out so you can see I've got my tabs on the left. So you can know that you're on the dashboard by the fact that you've got tabs on the left. So now I'm going to scroll back down from the admin tab. I'm going to scroll back down to the care section. So originally I had done individual intake and new. Well, since I've saved that information on that first individual, now I'm going to go in the individual intake row and I'm going to click on pending admission. So what happened is when I first entered this individual's information in, it considered them as a pending admission, and now they're listed here. I can see their name, birthday, and it shows that I put this information in today. So I'm going to click on their name, and it's going to take me to the individual data form so we can see what that looks like. So the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of slowly scroll down so you can see this individual data form, and then I'm going to go back and we're going to talk about how you fill out the different pieces of the individual data form. So you can see this is a very comprehensive form. We have some identification data, and we'll be looking at how you put that in there, what program they're in, and we'll look at that. You can put their address, where they were born, medical information and diagnoses, allergies, different guidelines, contact information. We'll talk about that as well, but you can put in contacts specific to the individual, like family members, and then you can also put in contacts like professional contacts like doctors, dentists, specialists, therapists, those kind of things. There's a section for insurance information. There's a section you can put in behavioral information. You can put assessments in here. You can note who is on their team and who is working with them. We also have a section where you can attach different files. And then we have a section for pending admissions notes. So maybe you've been working with a person and waiting for them to start services or with your agency or to come to your school. There is a way you can put some pending information in there. So When you're ready for the person to actually be officially in your system, we've got a button down here at the bottom of this individual data form that says admit. When I click admit, it's going to admit them as an individual in your Therap system. So I'm going to click on admit, and it's going to ask me for the date that they started. So this would be maybe the date that they started at the school or the date that they started at your agency. And so you click on the calendar. Maybe I'm going to say they came on June 1st, and I'm going to click done. And it tells me they were successfully admitted. So that's how I know that it worked. Now I can click this shortcut link here that says back, and it's going to take me back out there, or I can always go back out to the dashboard as well. So I'm going to click right here where it says back. And it takes me back to the individual data form, and now I can see next to her name, it says admitted. So this is how I know that they've been admitted into the system. So on this individual data form, there's two different ways you can enter data in here. There's some sections that you enter things in through the blue links in the middle of this form. And then there's some sections that you have to go all the way down to the bottom and open up the form. So right here where it says edit individual data, if I click on that, it's going to open up the form for me so I can put in the information that I have. So the nice thing about this is the majority of the stuff is optional. So if I don't have that information, it's okay. But if I do have it, I can put it in here. The other thing is you can put some of the information in, you can save it, and then you can come back and update it later. And then, in the end, you'll have everything you need in one place. So we do have the ability to attach a photo of the individual here. So you can actually have two different photos. If you wanted to add a photo, you would click add, you would find the photo, and then you could upload it. And then you could add a second photo. And then if you wanted to, you could also remove the photo. The date that you put the photo in is optional, but sometimes it's helpful to know how old the photo is. So then you can go through and start filling out their demographic information. And a lot of these things have drop downs, which is a time saver and makes it a little bit easier. So for gender, I would select their gender and click on that. And then again, ID type is going to be optional, and it's going to be depending on where you're located, how that affects you. But then I can also select their race. So we're going to say Asian. And notice I clicked on the plus mark and it moved it from here to over here. If I click on the wrong one, I could click minus and it's going to move it back. So if I click plus, it's going to move it over here, and that's how it knows that that's what I have selected, and that's where I've selected Asian for the race. We have some options for different ethnicities, if that applies. So we could say maybe Bengali. And then we can put in their height. And this is in feet and inches at this point. You can put in a weight range if you know what that is. Put in their hair color, their eye color. Characteristics are things that you can kind of put in here to describe the person, just to kind of help others know a little bit more about them. So maybe I'll say that she's very shy when she first meets people. But this is where you can kind of, if there's things that are helpful to know about the individual, you can put that in there for people to be aware of. Then you can select what their primary language is. And there's the oral language, and then there's also the written language. You can say if you think they need an interpreter or not. You can note what their religion is. their citizenship, marital status. The admission date's already here for us. We put that in earlier. If they were married, you got the option to put the date that they were married. If they end up being discharged out of your system, this is where you put that. And then you have the option to select the time zone that you're in. And then this living arrangement gives you options of different types of how people live. So you can say if they're living with a parent or a relative. So we're going to maybe say that this person is living with their parents. This section right here is where you can put the address of their residence. So if they happen to be living in a location that you've already got the address in your system, there's usually a way you can pull this in here. You can put the information as far as where they live, so you can put what country. And then whatever the address is, you can put that in here. If they have the same mailing address as their residential address, you can just click this box right here and it's going to pull that information. If it's somebody that their residential address is one and their mailing address is another, you've got the option to put in two separate addresses. For the sake of time, I'm not going to fill all this out, but you can see how that works. If you know where they were born, you can select the country that they were born in. And if you know the city, you can put that information in too. And these next sections, they're designed to be where you can kind of customize it or individualize it per person. So if they have emergency orders, you could describe that here. If they need to use adaptive equipment, you can put that here. So that could be a variety of different things. If you know what their blood type is, you can select that. If they have a developmental disability, you have these here on the list that you can select some from. So maybe I'm going to go with autism, and then you can also say what level of intellectual disability they have. And I'll be showing you here in a little bit how you put the diagnoses in more formally. This primary care physician list is going to come from what we call shared contacts, and there's a way that you can put shared contacts into the system, and then you'll have a master list. We'll look at that a little bit later in the call. You can put in medical information. This next section for the guidelines, you have the option to put in any dietary guidelines, eating guidelines. You can say what kind of communication modality or skills they have. So maybe this person is partially verbal. I could put comments here if I needed to. And then the same thing, I've got the ability to say where they're at with their mobility. So maybe I'm going to say that this person walks on their own. I could put comments. The next section talks about how much supervision does this individual need. So maybe this person needs some assistance with their personal care. So I'm going to select that item. And again, I could put details in here. If there is any issues with their food, I can say like if their food needs to be cut up, if it needs to be a certain consistency. The same with liquids. If they were referred to your agency or organization, you can list who referred them or details about that. You can note their toileting status. So maybe they need some prompts and monitoring for that. You can note their bathing status, mealtime status. You can say if they are their own guardian or not. So this is a child who's 10, so they're not their own guardian. So I'm going to put no for guardian of self. This section down here is where you can put insurance information if that applies. If it doesn't, you can just leave that blank. If there are concerns related to their behavior, you've got some space here to note that here. And then anytime you add anything or change anything within this individual data form, you want to make sure that down at the very bottom, you click this button that says Save in the bottom right-hand corner. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And it's going to tell me it was successfully saved. So I can click the back button to get there, but I'll also show you how you can find this from the dashboard as well. So I'm going to click where it says Dashboard. I'm going to be on this Admin tab again, and I'm going to scroll down. And I've got my individual intake row. Well, I've gone ahead and I showed you how to put them in initially. I showed you how to move them from a pending admission to actually being admitted in the system. So now to get to that individual data form, I actually go down to the next row that says individual. And when I click on list, it's going to give me a list of the individuals that are in this system. So here's my list, and I can look through and I want to find the one I was just working on. So here we go, and it shows their birth date, who put this information in. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hover over it. See how it kind of turns blue as you hover over it? If I'm hovering over it and it's this blue color, I can click on it, and it's going to open this up for me. I'm just going to check real quick to see if we have any questions. I don't see any, so I'm going to show you how we're going to do some of the next sections. So the next sections we're going to get into by clicking on the blue links that are in the middle of the form. So I'm going to scroll down to the first one. And this one says Edit Program Enrollment. So when I click on this, it's going to bring me to the section where it's going to list the different programs that I have in my system. Now, when you first set up your system with Therap, you would put in your programs or sites based on how things are set up at your school or at your agency. And so I'm going to maybe say that this person is in the speech therapy program at, well, that's in Nepal. Let's go with this. Let's go with they're in this demo site day shift. All right. We might change that to a school name or something at some point. So it's going to ask me for the date that they enrolled into this particular program. This is going to put today's date. But if you need to change it for this one, you can click on this calendar icon, select the date, and then click Enroll. And what's going to happen is it's going to move it from this list up here of programs you could choose from down to this section here where it says this is the program that she's enrolled in. So I can see she was enrolled in the day shift on this date. And then I still want to make sure I scroll down and look for the Save button in the bottom right. And then it's going to take me back out to the individual data form. And if I go down to that section, you can see right here it shows that that's the program that this individual has been enrolled in. And the nice thing about this system is individuals can be enrolled in multiple programs. So if they're in multiple classrooms or they're getting multiple services, you can enroll them in multiple programs as needed. All right, I'm going to scroll down to the next section. So within this medical information section, we have this blue link that says Edit Diagnosis List. And so I'm going to click on that, and we're going to talk about how you put the diagnoses for an individual into the system so that it becomes part of this individual data form. So I'm going to click on this link. And it's going to bring me to this page that says Diagnosis List. Well, this is a new person, so she doesn't have any diagnoses. So to add some, I'm going to do Add New Diagnosis. And the way that this works, you have to put the diagnoses in one at a time. And this is linked to the coding systems for the diagnoses. So the most current one that most places are using now is the ICD-10. And so if I need to look up the diagnosis, I can either put in part of the name of the diagnosis or the code. And when I start to type that, it is going to look it up for me. So I know this young lady has autism, so I'm going to start to type in the word autism, and it's going to go through and it's going to search. So here it says autistic disorder. If that is the correct diagnosis, I'm going to click on it, and it's going to pull it in here and say that they have this diagnosis. Now, some places still are using the ICD-9 for historic reasons, so you can put that in there as well if you want to. For autism, I'm pretty sure that one's $2.99. So if I click on that, let's see what that coded up. So that shows you can put it in by the word or the number. And this message that pops up that says there's no existing mapping for the ICD-9 diagnosis, part of that means that from a billing standpoint, you can't bill off of the old ICD-9 codes anymore. You have to have the ICD-10 code. But if you're not doing the billing and you're just wanting to kind of keep the history of their diagnoses, it's fine to do that. If you know what axis the diagnosis is on, you can select that. This is optional. The same with there's a description that's optional. If you know when they were diagnosed, if you have that somewhere, you can put that in on the calendar. So maybe they were diagnosed. Maybe I know it was in 2010. This links to the shared context that we'll look at the end. If I knew who diagnosed them, I'd be able to put that information in here if I have it in the shared contacts. If it's their primary diagnosis, I can select this box and it's going to say that this is the primary. In this case, for this person, we'll say that it is. And then once I go ahead and make sure I have everything that I want to, I've got two choices down here. I can save it, or if they have additional diagnoses that I want to put in, I can do save and create new. So I'm going to go ahead and do save and create new. And the way that this works, and in part because there's the lookup, you have to put the diagnoses in one at a time. So now I'm going to go ahead and put in their second diagnoses. They have do the lookup for me. And if I'm not sure of the diagnosis date or some of this information, I can still just go ahead and put it in. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And you can see right here, it's showing the two diagnoses that I have entered. And it's showing that which one's the primary. And if I needed to add another one, I can. There's not any limit on how many diagnoses you can put in here. Some places just focus on their main or primary diagnosis. Some list all of them, but that's kind of up to you, whatever is going to suit your needs. So when I'm done with the diagnoses, I've got this button here on the bottom left that says back. So I'm going to click back, and it's going to bring me back out to the individual data form. Now I'm going to scroll back down to that section again and talk about it just a little bit. When I was new to using Therap, I didn't quite understand this, but you'll notice here that I had the ability from within the individual data form to select autism and that they had a moderate intellectual disability. So this is information on their individual data form that's helpful. But in order to get the diagnoses to link to other parts in the system, I need to formally enter them in here like I just showed you through this diagnoses list. So once I enter a diagnosis in here formally like this, it's going to link to other parts of the system, and that's going to be helpful. It's going to link to their medication administration record. It's going to link to some of their health tracking information. So that's why you want to make sure you put them in formally here and link them. The next section is the allergies section. This also has the ability to do a lookup. I'm going to go ahead and click Edit Allergies. If they don't have any allergies at all, you can click No Known Allergy and No Known Drug Allergy Adverse Reaction. You would click both of those boxes and save it. But if they have an allergy, you're going to put these in one at a time. So I'm going to click on Add Allergy Information. And this also has a feature where it will look the allergies up. So I'm going to say maybe this person is allergic to penicillin. And when I start to type it, then I can do search. And so these are the different allergies that are out there in the database that we connect with. So if this person is allergic to all penicillins, I would click add. And after I do that, it's going to add it and put it down here. And this message is telling me allergy interaction will only take place for looked up data. So the way that this happens, if you do this search and you link it, if you put in all their allergies and you put in all their medications, the drug database that we use is going to cross-check the medications with the allergies and make sure there's not any issues. If there were, it will give you this message in big red letters to let you know. So if you have the code, you can use this coding system, but it's optional. You do have to select the type of allergy. So the things that are required here is what the allergy is and then the type. So this one's penicillin, so that's a drug allergy. I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. I have the option to say how severe it is. I can skip this, but I'm going to go ahead and say this is moderate. If I know the date the allergy was identified, I can put that in. And then I also can put in the reaction. So I'm going to say that they break out in a rash. And then I can save it. And I can look this over. If everything looks good, it's good. If I made a mistake, I can click here and it's going to open it back up. If I can make sure everything's okay. And then if I'm good and I'm done, I can go ahead and click back. And it's going to, again, take me back out to my individual data form. And if you scroll down now, you can see that penicillins are listed as an allergy. I'm going to show you the advanced directive section. Not a lot of people use this, but it could be helpful. This is where if they have something like a living will or a DNR, you can say yes. You can put the date that it was effective and any kind of comments. Not everybody uses this in our system, but it is there if you want to. I'm just going to kind of leave it as is, but just wanted to show that to you. So I'm going to go back out. So the next thing I want to talk about is contacts in the system. So we've got two different types of contacts. So the individual contacts are specific to this individual. And so this could be things like family members, emergency contacts, those kind of things. So to put those in, we'll just do one as an example. So I'm going to click on Create Contact. And you can see the things with the red asterisks are going to be required for this. So we're going to put in a contact. And we'll say, make sure that's the last name here. And if you have a residential address already in there for the person and you click this, it's going to pull it in. So remember I had put just Bangladesh in. When I clicked on that, it pulled it in. But since I have these red asterisks, I'm going to have to put something in here to make the system happy. And it wants a phone number. And then you've got some options. You can put in extra phone numbers, you can put in a web address, you can put in an email. And then if their mailing address is the same as what you have up here, you can click this box and it's going to pull it in. If it's not, you can enter in whatever you need. Well, this section down here, you need to say what is the relationship to the individual. So I have some choices here. Parent, relative, guardian, advocate. So this is their mom. So I'm going to say parent. And then I want to say, are they responsible for them as far as emergency contacts? So I could say yes. Do I want them to be a mailing contact? If I'm going to mail them something, I can say yes. And then if they're a medical guardian or responsible for medical decisions, I can say yes. These fields are optional as far as if I want to say like what agency they work at or something like that. And then I can also put any needed comments down here. And then when I'm done, I'm going to save it. And you can see that has put the contact out here on the individual data form. It tells me it was successfully created, and I can see their name as well as the type of contact that they are, their address, their phone number, and this could be helpful in an emergency. The shared contacts, I'm going to go to another system to show you how, another part of the system to show you how those get put in here. I don't think any are in here yet, but let me look. We got one. We've got a hospital in here. So we're going to look at that here in just a second. Okay. The assessments I'm just going to look at really quickly because this is a helpful place. If you have assessments for the individual, like if you had to have a psychological done or you have some kind of assessment showing what their abilities are, what their diagnoses are, or that they meet the criteria to get services, you can attach those assessments here. So when I click on create assessment score, it's going to bring me to a section here. So I could say the assessment type, and you can see it's pretty long. There's a psych eval, medical, nursing, all different kinds of assessments that you can put. And then after I select what type of assessment, I have the option where I could upload it and attach a copy of it here. So I could take the type, I would put the date of the assessment, and then I could actually attach a copy of the assessment here, and it's going to be attached to this individual data form. So if you have assessments in the paper record that are kind of like behind the initial sheets of the paper record, a lot of times people scan those in and attach them one at a time in this assessment section, and then you'll have all the information together. All right, so I'm just going to go back. You can add team members. Now, these are going to need to be people that are in your system. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that today. The attached files section, this is where you can add different documents. So you can have files that are up to 3 meg each, and you can have a total of files up to 10. So some of the things that are helpful to attach here might be something like an ID card, maybe guardianship papers, sometimes I've seen, people put insurance information, but anything that would be helpful to have with the individual data form, you can attach those things here. And then this last link is the emergency data form. So the emergency data form is kind of a subset or sections of this larger individual data form. So when I click on it, it's going to give me this emergency data form, and you can see it's a lot of the information that's on the individual data form. It's just a little bit shorter. And what some places will do is they'll print this out so they have it handy in case of emergency, or maybe they'll bring this to the doctor's office with them. But anything that needs to be changed on the emergency data form, you would change it on the individual data form, and then it's going to reflect here. And you can display this as a PDF and print it out if you need to. So those are all the sections except for I want to talk about the shared contacts a little bit. Okay, so to put in the shared contacts, I'm going to go back out to the dashboard. And on this admin tab, I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to find this section that says shared contact. And so I've got some options. I've got new and I've got list. Well, we saw earlier there was just one in here so far. So I'm going to click on new. And I'm going to fill this out. So for contact type, I'm going to maybe say that we're going to put in information for the dentist. I can put in the name of the dental clinic. So and then sometimes there's a specific name or person, but sometimes people go to a clinic. But if you've got the doctor's name, and then I'm going to select the specialty for them. So if I look on here, it's a pretty long list. The dentist is on here, but I'll just kind of show you there's all different kinds of things in here. So this gives you an idea of the types of shared contacts that sometimes people put in. Okay, so we're going to go with dentist. This is where I can put in their address. Again, for the sake of time, I'm not going to fill all this out, but you can see that I got to at least put the country. But this is where you'd put in the address, the phone number, and that kind of thing. Then I can say if the mailing address is the same or different. And if I'm putting in a bunch of these, I can do save and create new, but for now I'm just going to save this one. It's going to have me put in a phone number. So this is a good example of when you are doing something in Therap and it thinks that you've missed something, it's going to tell you. So instead of getting a successful message that it was saved, it's telling me I have to put in a phone number and a street. So that kind of makes sense, because how can you get in touch with them if you don't know where they are? So we'll put in a street, and we will put in a phone number. And then we will go down and do save again. And this time it tells me it has been created, and you can see those are the two shared contacts that are in here. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how do I link that to the individual. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard. I'm going to scroll down here and find my row that says individual, and I'm going to click on list. And then I am going to look for the individual we've been working on today. I'm going to hover over it and click to open it. I'm going to go down and find that section that says shared contacts. And here it is. So I'm going to click add shared contact. And this is going to give me a list. And I'm going to make this box a little bit bigger. When you first open this up, you don't always see this button over here. So if I want to add that dentist as this individual's dentist, I just go across and I click this blue add right here. And what it's going to do is it's going to put that in here. So it tells me it was successfully added, and here it is. Okay. And the nice thing about the shared contacts, if you have individuals that go to the same doctor or see the same therapist or specialist, you can put that in, and then you can put that in there. And then when you're doing other things in the system, like scheduling appointments, this information will link there. And the individual data form links to a lot of different parts of the system. So this is kind of like where you want to start. The nice thing about it is you don't have to fill out everything. You can fill out the information that you need. And then anytime if something changes, you can just either go in through the blue links to change it, or you can come down here and click edit. And you can get in there and you can add anything new if you need to, or you can change anything. And then anytime you change anything, you just want to make sure that you hit save. So that's our overview of the individual data form. This is being recorded, so it'll be available if people want to watch that. We'll get it available out on our website in the near future. If you have questions about any of this, or if you need to know more about Therap, you can go to our website here at www.therapglobal.net. You can click right here for Contact Us. We would be glad to talk with you and answer your questions and see if using Therap might be something that would be worthwhile for you if you're not using Therap, or if you're using Therap and you would like some additional training or assistance, just let us know. We would be happy to work with you. So I'm just going to check to see if anybody has questions. It does not look like that, so I am going to end the webinar, and I want to thank everybody for attending, and we look forward to having more people participate in webinars in the future. Thank you.